You're listening to Remotely One, a podcast that educates, entertains, and inspires you to take your life back from the office commute. I'm Rick, a former beer rep who left the warehouse to become a voice actor and digital creator.
And I'm Kaleem, a remote work advocate and consultant. We're going to speak with some of the top professionals who have managed to avoid the commute as they share stories from the most inspiring to the most comical, all while working remotely.
Man, this sounds awesome. Let's clock in.
How you been?
Yeah, good. Really good. I was just talking to Samara yesterday about Transform next year and our presence there. Should be fun.
Yeah. So, Rick,
Yeah.
the Transform event, which, you know what, Rick, next year we got to figure out how you and I can go together and maybe just interview a ton of people, because that'd be super fun.
That would be fun.
Show up to conferences like that and just do like interviews on the spot.
I'd love it.
But they were the sponsor and they had Nelly perform.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah,
Holy
so we're
cow.
at
So much fun.
It was so much fun. So we're at an HR conference. The thing that was funny to me as I was standing next to this dude, and he was like, "Do you think it's okay that Nelly's singing the song? It's getting hot in here. Back that ass up." At an
No. You know, the year before it was funnier because it was ludicrous and it was move, bitch, get out the way. So,
Ooh, bitch, get out the way.
Exactly.
Oh, that's amazing.
It was ludicrous. It was even funnier, you know. Nelly's tame in comparison to
Right,
ludicrous.
that is true. But I mean, one of the Nelly songs, the things he was singing, and I was just dying and laughing. What was the big Nelly song? Is he saying "Shake Your"?
Oh yeah, shake your tail feather. And yeah,
You see a whole bunch of HR professionals out there shaking tail fellas and shit. It was great. We danced all night, man. I danced my
brilliant.
ass off. I can't wait. That made it
Yeah.
worth it right there, man. That made it
yeah.
worth it.
They've set the bar high. I said to Samara, don't disappoint, you know. You've got to put it up there. No rock and roll bands or anything like that. We want another act like a Nelly or a Ludacris.
Welcome back, everybody, to Remotely One. I am Rick. He is Kaleem. What's up, man?
Hey, what's going on, man? What's going on?
I'm all tongue-tied this morning.
Yeah, I'm a little nerved up too. We just getting back from New York. Something about New York though, bro. You know what I love about it, man? It's like you go to the Big Apple and every city just seems nothing. There's just not enough people. There's not enough people walking around. I mean, in New York, it's just everything everywhere. Times Square is just lit up. I just love that shit.
You see the world differently.
Oh my gosh, so many people everywhere.
Yeah.
The only thing I don't like though is the trash juice that just drips on you when you're fucking walking through the.
Oh, no.
You know, there's just random juices that drop on you in New York.
Oh, yeah.
And you never know what they are. You know what I mean?
It's New York juice. It's everywhere. It just falls from the sky. But only in New York.
Only in New York.
Hey, everybody. A few housekeeping notes here. Since you know how to find us, do us a huge favor. Go to ratethispodcast.com/remotely one and just leave us a review. That's all we ask. Not a big deal. Just leave us a review. Again, ratethispodcast.com/remotely one. We would be so grateful if you could do that for us. Since 2015, Remotely One is one of the largest communities of remote work professionals with over 2,800 Slack members and 4,000 email subscribers. Holy shit, I can't believe it. That's amazing. It's free to join, so go check it out at remotelyone.com. And with that out of the way, Kaleem, what have we in store today?
Another guest. Got my hands all sweaty.
Oh, clammy! I'm all clammy
I
inside.
researched him before, grinding. Wait, we might have grinded a couple times. It's no big deal. Out in Vegas, I probably would have been a lot more formal. But today's guest, okay, he's a contributor to Forbes, and he writes on issues such as leadership and the future of work. Prior to his current company, he founded a company called Internships, which is a portal that connected students with over 7,000 startups and small businesses. As a child, our guest today was on Nickelodeon a few times, did a commercial.
What?
Yeah.
Nick.
Yes.
Nickelodeon. Remember that jingle?
Loved it. I love the slime thing too. Oh, we got to ask him if he got slimed. Holy shit.
Oh, yeah.
We got to ask him if he got slimed. But the other thing he was telling us earlier is that during the pandemic, he realized he wanted to be a DJ. His DJ. and he's been practicing.
He's got showbiz in his veins.
Yes, and I can't say his DJ name yet, but I will say it later.
Okay.
This is the part that got me nervous, Rick.
Yeah.
This is no big deal, but it made me a little nervous, okay? Our guest today is part of the World Economic Forum.
The World Economic Forum. That's like the whole world, dude.
It's a big forum, I think, as a young global leader.
Yeah.
He co-founded a startup Britain. No big deal. Like, he just created this community called Startup Britain. No big deal. Co-founder. Just an interesting fact that we found out, Rick, that, hey, Shelby is also an advisor to his company. We had Shelby on the podcast. Shelby Wopa. Shout out, Shelby.
Hey, girl.
Hey, girl. His current company has worked with King.com, Epic Games, and for all you gamers out there, Activision Blizzard. Works with them.
Cow. That's big time.
All of us design thinkers, just a small company they've worked with. IDEO, no big deal. No big deal. And then HelloFresh. We all know about HelloFresh.
Oh, indeed I do.
The food comes fresh. He is the founder and CEO of Learnerbly, which is a learning platform for employee professional development. Listeners and viewers, please give a warm welcome to Rajeeb Dey.
All right. Welcome to the show, Raj.
Hey guys. Really great to be on. That was wow.
DJ Dey.
Yeah.
DJ Dey.
That was the best. That was the best introduction I've ever had. Seriously, I was like, "What's coming next?" I was like, "I don't know what he's going to say next." But that was the best warm up. You know.
That's our goal.
I hope I don't disappoint. You know.
Edification, baby. That's what we do.
That's our goal, Raj. What we want to come out here live with energy and just hype you up. That's
yes, sir. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. We're so happy to talk to you. I have so many questions about Learnerbly, but before we get to that, knowing where you are now and all the things that you have done and that you have accomplished, what was it that really got your interest with remote work?
I suppose, like many people, the pandemic kind of forced that in a way a little bit upon us. So we were kind of, I'd say, pre-March 2021, whenever it was that the kind of COVID properly had going to happen. We did have an office. I probably work 1 or 2 days from home anyway, but we were kind of predominantly more office-based. But then, obviously, the pandemic kind of forced that upon us. But then we found that actually, you know what, the teams work pretty productively. People are happy. This is really working for us. And, you know, we don't need an office anymore. And so then we became a remote-first company. So I would say that the pandemic kind of it was kind of not an option. But then we realized actually this is a great thing, and we should kind of embrace this and become remote-first.
That's interesting.
So had you worked remotely before the pandemic in any of your other capacities?
Not formally. So beyond the fact that I personally probably would do 1 or 2 days, and we would recommend that as well to our team that, you know, even though that we do have an office, feel free to work from home if that works for you. And that was fine, but it was kind of, I suppose, more informal, and so we didn't necessarily have rituals and things like we do now as a remote first company. So there was less focus on that. It was a new experience for me, like it was probably many other people. So I wasn't as necessarily kind of clued up about how you need to operate in a more remote first world, but it was a really interesting and useful learning exercise as we kind of figured out what really works for our teams and colleagues.
Yeah, interesting. Let's go back a little bit before that. So you founded this company called Intern. He's spelling it with an E, being fancy.
So entrepreneurial internships. Yep.
Oh,
that's where it came from. Because you do an internship typically in a bank or a law firm or a consultancy firm, and the whole premise behind it was, you know, if you want to be an entrepreneur, other than setting up your own business, the best way to learn is to work in a startup or a small company, but you don't come across those companies on campus. And so let's create a new word, let's call it internships, so entrepreneurial internships, to try and change the culture around work and careers for university students.
So you said you can place in over 7,000 startups. How did that end up? I mean, are you still involved, or did you kind of move on from that? But like, that seems like it's a pretty popular website, I would imagine. Like, was that like your first product?
My first kind of thing was something I started when I was at school when I was 17, which is a social enterprise for school kids. Internships was my second thing. So basically, as I've grown up, my ventures have grown up with me, basically. So as at school for school students, then at university for university students. It was a really simple listing site just for students at Oxford when I was an undergraduate there. And then I graduated in 2008 into the first kind of graduate unemployment crisis. And I wanted to do something positive to help my peers kind of find interesting work opportunities. And so it kind of really started organically. And, you know, one of the things I say is I call myself an accidental entrepreneur because I didn't really set out necessarily to, like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, I want to do X, Y, Z. And so over the years, I've helped thousands of companies. But then for me, I'm driven more about the impact I'm making and the problem that I'm solving. And so at the time of running internships, there really wasn't the culture of working in startups, of being an entrepreneur, there was no exposure to these companies. This is 2004, 2008. And so part of my drive was, let's change this. Fast forward a number of years, in 2015, 2016, when I started to move on and work on Learnerbly, I realized that actually the culture had changed. And so I basically evolved and kind of pivoted the business into having helped all these companies hire great people, how do you now help develop them and retain them, and shifted my focus to Learnerbly. So a lot of our early clients of Learnerbly were actually internships clients previously.
Interesting. So how did Startup Britain come about?
So Startup Britain was a campaign that I co-founded with 4 other entrepreneurs. It was basically 3 months after President Obama had launched Startup America. We thought, you know, this is a great initiative, and long kind of story, but I happened to have met one of the Prime Minister's special advisors. His name was Lord Young. He's passed away now. At an event, I was speaking to him about what I was doing, and he said, you know, come and speak with me, come and meet me. At the time, Ollie Barrett, who was one of the co-founders of Startup with me, was also kind of saying, you know what, this is great what they've done in America. We need something similar to this. So we set up a meeting with Lord Young, and he said, the government and the Prime Minister is actually keen on doing something similar. This was in the time of David Cameron, who was the Prime Minister back then. But the whole mantra of the government is what they used to call the big society. So this is all about citizens doing things for themselves rather than government doing it for you. So why don't you guys go off and start this, and we'll support you? And that's exactly what happened. So we came together as a bunch of entrepreneurs. We had the support from Number 10 Downing Street, and we basically launched this thing within I think it was a 4 to 6 week period. We got it up and running. We had, you know, the Prime Minister, Secretary of State, Treasurer, like everyone from the cabinet were kind of there at the launch. It was really exciting, but it was inspired by what had happened in America a few months before. And we were in touch with the White House, and they put a message of support out there when we launched as well. So it was a really random thing to happen, but it was a really great experience. And through that, tens of thousands, you know, even more, hundreds of thousands of people have been in some way involved in that campaign. You know, it ran for a number of years. I subsequently kind of moved on. It was housed by another charity. But yeah, it was a really great initiative and exciting opportunity for me.
I mean, talk about just starting something with impact. Jeez, Rick, hopefully we're having impact, Rick. You know what I mean?
You are.
I like to think so, yes.
So, okay, I obviously have to ask you this. Can you, because I kind of know what it is, but not really. I just know it's a big deal. So can you explain to our listeners and viewers, what is the World Economic Forum specifically? But then how in the hell, and I'll say it again, how in the hell did you get on the World Economic Forum, sir? How in the fuck did that happen?
So World Economic Forum is most famous for a summit or a conference they have in January at Davos in Switzerland. And they basically bring together the world's presidents, prime ministers, celebrities, like everyone in the world is coming from like Buffett to Gates to Musk to, you know, presidents, prime ministers, everyone is flying in there to talk. And it's a kind of a multi-stakeholder approach to solving the world's biggest challenges. And so there'll be a different theme every year, and they have a community called the Young Global Leaders, and it's typically around 100 people they select every year aged under 40 that are recognized as doing something impactful in their respective field. And what I love about it is how diverse it is. Firstly, it's truly global, so there's people all across the world as part of this, and the areas of impact range from, you know, music, like, so will.i.am is a young global leader, to like former like kind of Justin Trudeau and like former kind of current prime ministers who've formerly been young global leaders, but also people you'd never have heard of who are doing amazing work in the not-for-profit space, in the sports, in the food, in the science, like all sorts of arenas. So you have to be nominated. There's a selection committee chaired by Queen Rania of Jordan, and then you receive a letter saying, we recognized you for your work. Do you wish to be part of this community? So it's an amazing community, and I was really honored because I was selected in 2012, I believe, and I was the youngest young global leader. So I was 26 at the time. So I was the youngest young global leader that they had, and it's just been a real honor to be part of that community ever since.
That's a home run if I've ever heard one.
Yeah, hit it out of the park at 26. I was like out of college, but still trying to do keg stands. I mean, like what? What? You know what I mean? Wearing adult diapers just for fun, and you're over here. You are at the World Economic Forum, Rick. I need to figure out. Like, I need to rewind. I need to do it.
We need to hop in a DeLorean and go back in time. I know I do anyway.
So, did you meet Will.i.am? Did you meet Justin Trudeau?
So. Yeah, at Davos, these guys are there. I got to go to a dinner with Gates, and you've got people like Branson, and basically every political leader is there. So yeah, I did go to Davos a couple of times, and then in the community itself, there's a whole bunch in London, and they're doing really amazing. So obviously, I named the kind of celebrity ones, but there are so many. Arguably even more inspiring people that are doing things to change the world in a positive way in a whole range of areas. And that's what I love about it. So anywhere I go in the world, we have like a WhatsApp and a Telegram group. I can just say, I'm here, is anyone? And even if I don't know them, they will make time to meet with me or introduce me to someone. So it's a really great community to be part of.
Is Justin's hair really that wavy and smooth in person?
Yeah, it is. It is, absolutely.
Okay.
Is he really a dreamboat?
A dreamboat.
So I have a quick question about Learnerbly. Now, you deal with a wide range of organizations, I'm sure. What are most organizations looking for? What are they struggling with, either with their employees or management themselves? Like, how is this shift in society affecting organizations?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question. It's really connected to, I suppose, this shift to remote work as well in particular. So
that's what I meant, yeah.
Yeah, so pre-pandemic, when people were more based in an office, you would equate learning and development to like sitting in a room, a training room, someone presenting something to you, and then you've done your company training, whatever it might be. During the pandemic, when people were forced to go remote, decided to kind of move to a remote or hybrid world, companies recognize that they need to think differently about how they upskill and reskill their employees, and also recognize that they need to support their employees in terms of boosting employee engagement. And interestingly, learning is a really good way of boosting employee engagement. And what we do at Learnerbly is that we're a marketplace of over 200 different learning and development providers. So you're not typically within a business, you're wedded to one particular vendor. And what the HR person finds is that no one's using it. Like 10% people might log into LinkedIn Learning. And that might just be like, people don't all like learning online. There are different ways that people like learning. And so with us, the benefit is that you can learn through books, coaching, courses, conferences, e-learning, podcasts, articles, videos. We recognize that people all learn differently, and we curate content from over 200 different providers. And so over that period of time, what was happening was that companies recognize we need to engage our employees, we need to provide them new ways of engaging in learning, and also particularly pre the kind of slowdown in the macro climate, where companies, particularly in tech, where we have a lot of our clients, were just hiring, right? They were just hiring like mad, and they wanted to attract talent. And employees this day and age want to know, how you're going to invest in me? How am I going to learn? How am I going to grow? So providing Learnerbly, the whole model is you get a stipend, and you can spend that on the marketplace of content. And so you're really empowered to take ownership. And so the other thing that was happening is that we have a whole bunch of social feeds. So you can see what your colleagues are learning right now through a Slack integration, through an activity feed, through like reviews. And all of that was helping to contribute to high levels of employee engagement in a remote world. And also recognizing that, the kind of water cooler chats that you might have in person in office, or you might learn through osmosis sitting next to someone, that doesn't happen when you're working remotely. So you have to be far more intentional about how you support your colleagues to learn and grow. And so bringing in a platform like Learnerbly really help support companies who are remote first, hybrid, or want a more modern take on employee development.
Wow. Yeah. So my prior career, I was in faculty development, so very similar to professional development, but in higher education, your professors need to develop themselves, learn new teaching techniques and stuff like that. So the question I have is, what was your thought process prior to the pandemic? So roughly what year did you start conceptualizing the idea for Learnerbly?
Mm-hmm. So it was 2016 that we had what we call like the minimum viable product, like a basic first version of the platform. 2017, we raised our seed investment. And so it was obviously clearly pre-pandemic. The thought process around that was really the recognition that people all learn differently, frustration about the status quo, also the recognition that there's no quality control in professional development. So anyone can be a coach, anyone can be a trainer, nothing stopping the three of us setting ourselves up as coaches now and just maybe knowing nothing about coaching, but having a shiny website and good SEO, and then people type in, executive coach, and they see us and pay loads of money, but then there's an opportunity cost. Like, not only have you wasted the money, but the time you've wasted on something which is not great. And so that element of curation and quality control was a big part of it. It's like, how do we help people recognize what's good out there and connect them to what they want to learn based on how they like to learn? So it was a mixture of all of those things that led me to set up Learnerbly.
So I'm assuming you all were doing pretty well prior to the pandemic. Sign on some clients. Things are cool. You're like, everything's great. Then March 2020 hits. What happened? What impact did the pandemic have on Learnerbly?
Yeah, I think the whole edtech sector saw a huge kind of boost as companies were really scrambling to figure out how we're going to support our employees. We need to find new ways of learning. And so, we definitely saw a big influx of business and clients coming our way. We also did an initiative. So in the UK, they had this scheme called the furlough scheme, where companies were really struggling by being shut down and not being able to operate in person. And so the government were basically giving out subsidies and grants to companies to pay their employees to just basically not work. And it was the furlough scheme. And so what we did during that period was effectively offer the platform for free to thousands of employees who are furloughed, just so that they could do something to continuously upskill themselves and continue to develop themselves in a period where they were not working. And so that was a more of a CSR type initiative where we wanted to do something to give back to society. But generally, we did see a significant uplift in clients coming forward. And as I said, the whole edtech sector experienced a huge boom. Whether you're a primary school teacher, universities teacher, whatever, everyone had to figure out how we're going to make the shift to online.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So in that vein, does Learnerbly currently, or is there a plan for in the future to have any type of in-person learning development programs?
Yep, so we have conferences on there, which are often obviously in person.
Yeah. Okay.
We have, coaches can choose to obviously do remote or do in person, events and things like a meetup. So we truly believe in what we call multimodality, literally giving people the option to choose what works best for them and giving them that choice so that, your preferences might change. So interestingly, my preferences on learning changed during lockdown because pre-pandemic, I was an avid book reader, so I'd read physical books on my commute to work. But because I wasn't commuting anymore, I lost that time. And so I wanted to switch and to make sure I was still learning. And so I switched to Audible and listening to podcasts a lot more. And, Learnerbly supports all those different modalities, which is probably one of the only learning platforms where you can access a whole breadth of different learning options. And, that was obviously my example, but many other people experience similar things where their preferences change or they like different ways of learning, and therefore just giving it's just basically a one-size-fits-none model is the status quo, and we are hyper-personalized to what works for your employees.
Well done.
Very well thought out.
Yeah, because you do, like Rick, I love going to conferences. I just absolutely love it.
Yeah, and the other challenge, I suppose, in the status quo is that you're often expected to spend the money yourself and then wait to get reimbursed. And that in itself can be a block and barrier for people, particularly if you're junior, you're not necessarily earning that much money, then you have to wait however long to get reimbursed through the payroll system. And so we just take all of that friction away because your credits are loaded on the system, you request it, your manager approves it, it gets purchased for you, you don't have to worry about reimbursements or anything like that. So it just really streamlines the whole process.
That's pretty cool. I have a question in regards to like where we're heading. You know, you even talked about prior to the pandemic, you were mostly in office, and then now you transition to a remote first company. So I'm assuming you still have an office, but people have the choice. Is that what you're, when you say remote first company?
No, I would say that up until April, that was the case. So we were kind of doing employee engagement surveys, and they said, you know what, we would, because we were always paying for people to have co-working passes. But what was happening was that because there's a lot of employees in London, they were like, we all want to be in the same place. So for a year, we did hire an office again, but we showed the data, which is like, we hired this office, you said you wanted it, but you're not using it. And so as of April, we got rid of it again and went back to giving people these passes. And with Hubble Pass, you just use, and it's international as well. So if I'm traveling to SF or to New York, I will be able to find a local co-working space as part of that marketplace that I can work from.
Well done.
So that
Hubble Pass?
It's called Hubble Pass, yeah. The company's called Hubble, and it's run by a friend of mine. And it's a great service. So now there's like a Slack integration so that when you book yourself into one of these co-working spaces, you can see where your colleagues are working. So if you want to, you can choose to pick the same one. So there's definitely a desire, particularly I'd say from younger members of our team, to be somewhere and have that sense of community. Or like sometimes, you know, if you're in a small flat or an apartment and it's a bit, you just want to change, right? And so I think giving people that flexibility to be able to work from somewhere is good, and you know, it's been well received. So we say remote first, but obviously people can go and work in whichever co-working space they wish to.
Amazing. Flexibility is key.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, flexibility first, yep.
So I'm wondering, you know, me being somebody who's transitioning into a remote career, in your own words, how important is learning and development for someone like me?
I think learning and development is important for everyone, like regardless of your context or what you do or the stage of life. I think what we're seeing is with the rise of kind of generative AI and what's happening with ChatGPT, everyone's job is in some way, shape or form going to change. And if it hasn't already, it will do. If you haven't figured it out, it definitely will. Everyone's like a core skill set will be to become prompt engineers, like how we prompt those AI systems like ChatGPT to help augment our work is what is going to be the skill set of the future. Now, I think it's really important, and that's just one example of a particular skill set that I think is going to be useful. With the rapid change of kind of technology, we all need to keep ourselves up to speed with what's happening if we want to stay relevant. Now, if we don't care and when our job gets automated and you just want to sit at home, that's different. But if you want to stay up to date and be able to evolve as the world of work is evolving around you, you need to be curious and you need to have that kind of growth mindset.
Now, does Learnerbly incorporate AI resources as well?
Yeah, so we have that as obviously as a topic area, so you can learn about AI on Learnerbly, but also we've obviously incorporated it within the platform as well to help make recommendations better and things as well.
All right, Kaleem, we got to sign up for a membership. I'm sold.
Well, actually, that's an interesting question, though. Learnerbly is a corporate learning platform, right? So customers just can't generally just sign up, right?
At the moment, yeah, it's a really good question. We are B2B2C. So an employer needs to bring us in. They need to give their employees a stipend, or it could be a central budget, it could be a team budget, and then you have access. We don't at the moment have a B2C proposition. You're not the first person to ask, but it's not at the moment in our current roadmap, I would say.
In our current roadmap, I say.
Yeah.
It's very, very HR of you.
My product people who might be listening to this is like, did you just promise to create like a B2C business? Like that's not, we did not discuss that. So I'm definitely staying on message with my product people. Yeah, even though you asked for it, sadly you're not getting it right now. You know?
Thank you, Rick. Everyone email Rick at all the team. I have a question, like being in the space of people ops. A lot of times learning and development is under the HR department, and a lot of services in this space have always been kind of looked at as a nice to have. And when the budget gets cut, they just cut it right away. Or like you said, they just send you to this workshop. But it seems like we're starting to see a little bit of shift. And I wanted to get your thoughts. Obviously, you might be jaded a little bit in this one, but a lot of organizations are starting to move towards getting away from the typical annual reviews. And they're actually putting in, well, they're using annual reviews, but they're including their professional development as part of their annual review. Like you said, you were going to improve yourself. So some companies are really pushing that. How do you feel about it from obviously the CEO of Learnerbly, but as an individual, do you feel like the pressure for people to learn, do you feel like that's fair, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the cynical side is that, what gets measured gets done. And obviously, if it's in your performance review, if it's in your quarterly OKRs, or, you will put focus on it. Now, clearly, particularly a lot of the clients we work with in the tech sector, the fast-growing tech companies, they hire people who are curious, they're self-driven, they have that growth mindset. But, a lot of people won't, and that's also fine. But I think, as I mentioned earlier, with the rapid rate of change, it's not an option not to develop in some way, shape, or form. Now, that could include the technical skills of like generative AI, but even if you don't want to go there, we can all develop in terms of our what is typically called soft skills, but often the hardest skills to actually develop, which is how do you show up as a manager? How do I communicate? How's my empathy? How's like all of these kind of things? There's always opportunities to develop, right? And so if anyone says that they're a finished product, that's a big red flag as an employee. If they do not have that growth mindset or that willingness to take on feedback and develop in some way, shape, or form, as an employer, that would seriously worry me. Now, if that means you need to put it in your performance review or whatever, then so be it. I would actually argue that annual is not frequent enough. I think it needs to be at least twice a year, but there should be regular check-ins with your colleagues, because otherwise what will happen is there's always a recency bias in your review. Just kind of do something at the last minute to please the manager, whereas actually if these are regular development conversations should be happening monthly or like quarterly, like at worst, because checking in, seeing what you can do to support, and development doesn't even need to be going on a course. It could simply be like, are you getting exposure to the kind of projects you want to get exposure to? Are you what are the internal mobility opportunities for you? And going back to one of your kind of where you started this question around this kind of chopping it in difficult times and being a nice to have, I think what we're seeing in this current climate is we're moving from an era of talent acquisition to talent activation. And this is actually a term that I was speaking to some people leaders at Transform. And, back in the day, it was just hire, fill whatever problem you have with a human and just get it done. Now, with RIFs and hiring freezes, you need to do more with less. And so the question becomes, how do I ensure the people I've got are engaged, they're motivated, they're high performing, and they've got the skills they need to perform and thrive? And that's why what's important now is the role of learning development is to be more intentional and making sure that you're developing the skills that you need, but really what the business also needs you to learn and in the way that they need you to learn. And so we as a company are really rebasing all of our work and content around skills and being really clear about what skills will you develop by accessing this book or this e-learning kind of resource, whatever it might be, and how does that tie in with business objectives as well? Because I think that's the key, right, is to be able to, I think no one's going to crack the whole return on investment question, because it's really impossible, because it's not an arbitrary, do this course, you will increase 10x productivity. There's so many nuances around it, but the more you can align the learning that you're doing to business goals and objectives, obviously, particularly in a tricky climate, the better off for everyone.
Okay, one more question before we get to Rick question. We're seeing a lot of return to office news, a lot of return to office mandates, and you've even said that you actually went from an office, went remote, and then people said that they wanted to connect more. Then they weren't coming into the office. I recently just read some article the other day about someone talking about, well, we're all just going to go back to normal. Like, this is going to be a fad. It's going to wear off. What were some of your biggest challenges transitioning? And then do you actually think that this is just going to transitioning to a remote first organization with some of your biggest challenges? And then where do you think this remote work thing is heading? Do you think we will fall back into old habits, or do you what are your thoughts?
So I think, in terms of the first part of the question, like what were the challenges? I think some of the challenges were just changing the norms and the rituals, right? So we're having to get far better at asynchronous communication. So whether that be recording a Loom video, writing a note in Notion, or using kind of Miro to do like virtual collaboration, like all of these tools have just come out to make virtual remote work for us, right? To be able to collaborate with people. So I think that firstly kind of took some time to kind of adopt those new tools and rituals and habits, and making sure that when we have an all hands meeting for everyone dialing in, now we've got our first colleague hired in the US. We're mindful of the time zones that we're in so that everyone can join at the same time, so doing it at 3 p.m. UK time. So those are kind of little kind of adjustments. Going to your second point about where things are going to go, at least speaking from the tech scale-up, startup, and the tech industry, I do not think we're going back to pre-pandemic world. I do think companies will want to encourage people to come together face-to-face, but I don't think mandating it in the way they are is going to work. I think you need to give people a reason to come to the office, and that you have to be intentional about how you design the space. You have to create spaces for collaboration. It should be around collaborating, brainstorming, creativity, which, I mean, what we do as an exec, we meet as an exec face-to-face every Tuesday, and we find that really beneficial. And that's something that we've chosen to do and that works for us. But what we've done is also given every team what's called a connection budget. And so they can decide how they wish to connect. So if the developers wish to connect remotely, then so be it. That's fine. If the salespeople want to connect in person, so be it. We're not going to mandate that. And I think that's what's important, is that recognize that there's going to be different people with different needs. And so as an employer, you need to be really careful about mandating like an office-wide thing, because the best people in the industry have options, they have choices, and now that they've had a taste of remote work, they're not going to want to go back Monday to Friday to an office, to a desk. It's just not even efficient to do so. So giving flexibility, I think, is key, and trusting. And you just need to trust your people at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's all it comes down to, essentially. I mean, really.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that proximity bias thing is definitely an issue, and I think that's something that leaders need to get to grips with. Is just because I can't see where you're at, you're not working next to me, and that doesn't mean you're not working. And I think that can be quite a mindset shift for a lot of leaders.
Absolutely. So, Raj, tell us. Tell us about a comical or inspiring, maybe a little bit embarrassing moment that you may have had while working remotely.
Yeah, so I had to think about this one, so I have to be really careful what I say. This is a comical moment, and it didn't impact me, but I was involved. We had a meeting. Again, I'm not going to tell you what kind of meeting it was. It might give away too much information. We had an important meeting. Done. The person who participated in that meeting was on holiday. This person, just to clarify, is not an employee, but it was an external person. Was on holiday, but they dialed into the meeting. And let's just say they thought their camera was off, but it for some reason had turned on. And they were not in... It was a slightly compromising situation in terms of attire, what was going on in the place. And let's just say that the rest of the people in the meeting were trying to contain their laughter based on what they saw. So it was an unfortunate camera fail moment for that particular participant. But I can't tell you more about what kind of meeting it was. It would just narrow the pool of people too much. So it was very NDA. It was very interesting. Luckily, it was not recorded. So
how eloquent did he sound explaining that? Like, because we all know what he's talking about.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? full frontal nudity, Raj. I mean, like, what's going on?
I will not say much more. It was compromising, I would say, and I think we all just kind of decided to suppress our laughter and carry on with the agenda of the meeting.
So how did you let the person know, or did they just know right away?
I think that person got a number of WhatsApp messages from us, and then at the end there were some snarky comments made, and I think they realised. So
yeah, and your messages are encrypted.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Oh my gosh, that poor person. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's definitely exactly what we were looking for. Raj, where can our listeners find you?
They can find me on socials, on Twitter, Rajeeb Dey, LinkedIn, and learnerbly.com. Check it out. If we can help you with your workplace learning, do get in touch. But yeah, it's been great being on the show. Hopefully you'll get to see us in person again at next year's Transform conference. But yeah, it's been a real pleasure.
Yeah.
Well, the pleasure is all ours. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, man. Really appreciate your time. I'll see you next year in Vegas.
Indeed. Take care, everyone.
You've been listening to Remotely One. Visit us at remotely1.com/podcast for upcoming episodes. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and download our episodes on your favorite podcast app.
Hey, don't forget to clock out.